I'm Bishakha. This summer, I got the opportunity to mentor Salma. Salma is a ninth grader at Mello School, right? From day one, I could realize that Salma is really interested in neuroscience, which is my area of expertise, and it was a great combination. So we really discussed the basics of neuroscience and how it affects our everyday life. We chose a project which is very relevant to current events, which is on mental health and how it affects teens. And you can hear more about it from her. I want to point out during just these 8 weeks, Salma could understand and really learn about reading scientific papers, which is not an easy task. Just going through these papers and picking out the right information from them is very hard to do. And she was able to be an expert at that towards the end. So I'm really proud of her. So up to her.
Thank you so much, Bishakha. Yes, Bishakha is my amazing mentor, and she is a neuroscience fellow at Science Philanthropy Alliance. She is based in Mountain View and really enjoys reading and spending time outdoors, and her favorite color is black. So my project is teenage mental health during social isolation. And I came into the MAGIC program really interested in neuroscience and how we might think we're always in control of our actions, but really our brains are behind all of it. After hearing about my mentor's work on mental health and neurodegenerative diseases, I was really curious about the science behind mental health issues because I'd never really looked at it from that scientific lens before. Of course, with everything going on in the world, from the fires to the pandemic to social justice issues, all of this is going to have an effect on our mental health. And I really wanted to learn more about its effects on teenagers because, I mean, I am a teenager and I know firsthand that teens already deal with a lot of uncertainty and challenges during this time in their lives. And we also, pre-pandemic, communicated mostly online through social media. So it's really interesting to see now that we're forced to do everything online, what has changed. And we're also stereotypically known to rebel against our parents and rely on our peers. So when authority figures are telling us we have to stay away from our friends, what's that like doing? So we decided to do a literature review and an online survey to learn more about other teens' quarantine experiences. So like I said, I was really interested in the neurobiology of mental health and the fact that, as you can see, like mental health issues don't just affect a person's behavior, but they originate from and really, really affect a person's brain. As you can see on the leftmost, we have a normal looking brain with the normal activity map. And to the right of that is a depressed brain with severely lower activity levels. And all the way to the right is a brain with OCD with just hyperactive map. So there's a lot of differences between a normal brain and one with a mental health illness. One of which is in a normal brain, new neurons are born and are able to function normally. But in a depressed brain, those newborn neurons never actually become functional, and it leads to severe effects on the connectivity and the actual size of the amygdala and hippocampus regions of the brain, which are responsible for memory and emotions and are why people with mental illnesses tend to have emotional outbursts or selective or faulty memories. And as you can see from the photos, mental health is essentially physical damage in the brain. And yet mental health and physical health are treated so differently, one with so much stigma and taboo that makes it infinitely more difficult to deal with. And throughout my magical experience, this stigma was one of the biggest challenges I faced. Even though Bishakha and I worked really hard to phrase the survey questions to make them something that teens would be willing to answer or feel comfortable answering and with no like negative connotations, teens were still really worried that admitting to having mental health issues or seeking clinical help for their emotions would somehow, the information would get out, and they were really concerned about privacy. So this was one of the biggest challenges. But I was really proud that despite being a survey on such a taboo topic, I was able to receive such a high volume of responses. And like Bishakha said, I really gained the ability to unpack scientific studies and papers, which will unlock like so many more opportunities for me to learn about neuroscience in the future. And I'm really grateful for that. So this is my demo video. going through the results of my survey. So the survey's goal was to learn more about other teens' quarantine experiences, and we received 218 responses so far. So as teens are stuck at home, the assumption is that they'd go online for entertainment, social connection, and anything else they can't do physically. And we wanted to know if that was universal. So we asked whether they were spending more time on their screens or more time watching YouTube, movies, TV shows. The answer was overwhelmingly yes, which is not a good thing. Reading literature or watching more TV allows people to connect to others and populate their own minds without actually making meaningful connections with other humans. It's a method of coping with loneliness. So an increase in this means an increase in feelings of loneliness and isolation. So the next question broke down their screen time even further and revealed that teens spent the most time online entertaining themselves, a little bit socializing, but mostly spending their time passively, which is not the best use of their screens. And it's also important to note that studies that connect mental health issues to screen time do so to quantity of screen time, not quality, which is far more important. So we then wanted to know how many people teens were having meaningful connections with each day, like real conversations, not just scrolling through social media. And the answer was around 4 to 6 people, which is definitely lower than the normal pre-pandemic summer days when they're surrounded by their friends. But it turns out teens are actually valuing their family time more now that they're cut off from their peers. So it's possible just their close 4 to 6 relationships that thrived during the pandemic. But the next question revealed that social isolation actually hasn't had a severe impact on relationships by making them stronger or weaker. Everyone has moved everything online, and so everyone's able to maintain their friendships, whatever that may mean for that person. And because social isolation hasn't had an impact on relationships either way, we expected that teens would be split on their preference for socializing, but overwhelmingly preferred pre-COVID methods of socializing with their friends. And the reason for this is nostalgia, which is a feeling most common among young adults, as it staves off feelings of anxiety, loneliness, and fear, and helps them cope with changes and uncertainty, which there are plenty of during this time in the world. We then wanted to ask about teens' emotional mindsets. And on the whole, 2/3 of teens, like almost everyone in the world right now, are really concerned for our future and what's going on. But 1/3 of teens have been able to adapt and are taking it one day at a time. And as the online generation, it was definitely easier for us to move online than our grandparents and parents. We then focused on specific emotions and how they've changed post-COVID. On the whole, teens are more anxious, sad, tired, angry, and frustrated now than they were before the pandemic. There were also more teens seeking clinical help than we expected, which does show an improvement in the way our society is destigmatizing mental wellness. Now, the reason we asked these final 2 questions was curiosity over what teens would be doing if their choices were entirely their own, if it wasn't their parents telling them to stay home or their teachers forcing everything online. Would they only value their own freedom over everyone else's safety? However, the majority of teens said that not only do they know what the regulations are, but they agree and are complying with them. In the fall, they also want to return to school either virtually or in like a hybrid mixture of the two, which seems to be the plan of most of the schools they attend, as well as the advice of most medical professionals. At the end of the day, most teens may not be at risk for losing their lives to coronavirus, but that does not mean our generation doesn't care. We really do and want to help the situation in any way that we can. So that was my demo. And since many teens are struggling with this and going through a tough time, we compiled just a quick list of resources that are out there for teens at home, as well as parents and teachers dealing with their students or children. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I had a lot of fun with this project. If there are any questions, I would love to answer them.